You lazy fool, Amara. What is so hard in taking care of one child? Are you the first woman to have a baby? Once upon a time, on a bright yet scorching afternoon in Lagos, Nigeria, a woman named Amara found herself in the middle of an exhausting day. It had been 5 months since she gave birth to her baby girl, Kaima. But life had been far from peaceful. The sleepless nights, endless feeding schedules, and overwhelming household responsibilities hung heavily on her. To make matters worse, her husband, Chidi, had never been supportive. Chidi, who worked out of town, had left her alone to care for their baby, Kaima. When he was around, he was far from the loving husband she had once hoped for. He never acknowledged her struggles as a new mother. Instead, he tortured her emotionally. At the slightest mistakes, he would lash out at her, sometimes even hitting her, leaving Amara feeling trapped, broken, and ashamed. Despite her fear and exhaustion, she tried her best to manage everything on her own. That Friday, Amara had planned to take Kaima for her immunization at the hospital. After that, she had intended to stop by the market to pick up a few groceries before heading home. As usual, Amara was overwhelmed. Her body ached from lack of sleep, and her mind was a fog of exhaustion. She flagged down a taxi at the hospital's gate, with Kaima snugly strapped against her chest in a baby wrap. "Market side, please," she mumbled to the driver, adjusting her hair to hide how drained she felt. Her eyes were heavy, and all she could think about was getting home to rest. The driver nodded and started the trip. Navigating through the hectic streets of Lagos, where car horns, street vendors, and shouting pedestrians all blended into a chaotic chorus. Amara tried to keep her eyes open, but the rocking motion of the taxi, coupled with the relentless noise of the bustling city, lured her into a deep, involuntary sleep. She tried to keep her eyes open, but it was of no use. Her body was begging for rest. As the taxi drove on, Amara's phone rang. It was Chidi. With her heart racing, she quickly answered, knowing it could only mean one thing: trouble. "Amara, where are you?" His voice boomed from the other end of the line, already filled with irritation. "I am on my way to the market," she replied softly, her voice weak. "Market? So you haven't cooked yet? You just waste time doing nothing. All you do is complain about being tired. What is so hard in taking care of one child? Are you the first woman to have a baby?" Amara tried to calm Chidi while holding Kaima, but the intensity of the argument distracted her. She had to lay Kaima down beside her. The harshness of his words cut through her like a knife. She tried to explain, to defend herself, but he wouldn't listen. His anger grew, and the conversation quickly escalated. Chidi berated her, telling her she was useless, lazy, and a disappointment as a wife and mother. Amara felt tears burn her eyes as his cruel words echoed in her ears. Her mind spiraled. How had she ended up in such a dark place? Why was her life like this? The conversation left her numb. She hung up, staring blankly out of the window, her emotions in turmoil. Her mental and physical exhaustion mixed with the emotional abuse Chidi constantly dished out. She had no strength left. The taxi driver pulled up near the entrance of the market, calling out to Amara, "Madam, we don't reach market, oh." Still dazed from the phone call and mentally scattered, she quickly gathered her things, her purse, her phone, but her mind was elsewhere. The pain from Chidi's words was still ringing in her head, drowning out everything else. She barely registered that Kaima was still fast asleep in her baby wrap, now forgotten in the back seat of the taxi. Her mind was completely disoriented. "Thank you," Amara mumbled. Stepping out of the car with shaky hands, she paid the driver and hurried off into the busy market, her thoughts clouded by fear and shame. She walked into the market, weaving through the stalls, her mind foggy and her limbs heavy. She grabbed tomatoes, peppers, some spinach, and yam, mentally noting the prices. Her mind was still elsewhere. The noise and chaos of the market didn't even register as she moved from one stall to another. She was on autopilot, her thoughts still circling back to Chidi's cruel words. The guilt, the shame, the exhaustion, it was too much. About 30 minutes later, Amara was done. She hailed another taxi to take her home, but something felt amiss. As the taxi drove off, her tired brain tried to put the pieces together. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. "Kaima!" The realization hit her like a punch in the stomach. She had left her baby in the first taxi. "No, no, no, no," Amara screamed, her hands trembling as she yelled for the driver to stop. The driver looked confused as he pulled over, but Amara had already jumped out, running back towards the market. She had no idea where the first taxi had gone. She couldn't remember the plate number or even the driver's face. She was in a complete panic. "God, please, no, don't let this happen to me," she cried, stumbling through the streets, her legs shaking beneath her. She asked every taxi driver if they had seen a baby in a red taxi, but no one had. The panic grew, tightening in her chest until she could barely breathe. Meanwhile, in the first taxi, the driver, now parked at the market entrance, was chatting with a fellow driver when he heard a soft cry from the back seat. He turned around and froze. There, wrapped a small pink blanket, was a baby, Kaima. "Jesus Christ!" the driver exclaimed, looking around to see if the mother was nearby. She wasn't. He couldn't believe it. A baby alone in his taxi? "Wetin I go do now?" the driver muttered to himself, pacing around his taxi. He thought about taking her to the nearest police station, but then doubt crept in. What if people thought he had kidnapped her? What if the police didn't believe him? He could lose his taxi license. His livelihood would be ruined. As Kaima's cries grew louder, a small crowd began to gather around the taxi. People peeped inside, whispering among themselves. "Who leaves a baby in a taxi?" one woman asked, shaking her head. "This city no be normal place, so," another man muttered. "Please take the baby to the nearby police station," they all advised. The driver knew he had to act fast before things get out of control. He grabbed his phone and started dialing the police. But halfway through, a different idea crossed his mind. What if he took the baby back to his house for a while? Maybe the mother would come back looking for her. Maybe she was just around the corner. It wouldn't be too risky, right? He quickly decided, "I no fit stay here make this thing turn wahala," he murmured to himself as he gently placed the baby back into the car seat and sped off. Meanwhile, Amara was in the middle of a full-blown panic attack. Her legs felt like they would give out any minute. Her breath was coming in short, sharp bursts. Her hands shook uncontrollably. People stared at her as if she was crazy, but Amara didn't care. Her baby was gone, and the reality of the situation was suffocating her. She could barely think. tears streaming down her face as she pulled out her phone to call her husband. Chidi, Chidi, she wailed into the phone as soon as he picked up. I have lost Kaima. I lost our baby. What? What are you talking about, Amara? Calm down. How can you lose a baby? Chidi's voice was tense, but she could hear the panic creeping into it. I fell asleep in a taxi and I forgot how when I got out. Chidi, I don't know what to do. Chidi was silent for a moment, trying to process the impossible situation. You fool! Amara, go to the nearest police station now. I am coming to meet you now. Just get to the police first. As Amara rushed to follow Chidi's instruction, somewhere across town, the taxi driver had just arrived his small apartment. He carried Kaima inside, awkwardly cradling the baby, unsure of what to do next. His one-room apartment was cluttered with old newspapers, clothes, and random trinkets he had collected over the years. He carefully placed Kaima on his bed, trying to soothe the crying infant. Now only for let God something like this fit happen, oh, he muttered, scratching his head. Wetin I go tell my wife when she come back? Just as the driver was trying to figure out his next move, there was a loud knock at the door. His heart skipped a beat. Was it the mother? Or worse, the police? Who be that? He called out nervously, his voice shaking. The knock came again, louder this time. The driver's mind raced, wondering what kind of trouble he had just gotten himself into. Should he answer, or should he hide the baby? Suddenly, Kaima let out a loud wail, and everything seemed to fall apart at once. He carefully peeked through the door hole. It was Dele, his best friend. He forcefully opened the door and pulled him inside. Dele, my friend, I don't enter wahala o. A woman forgot her baby in my car. I thought of reporting at the nearest police station, but I was unsure of what would be the outcome. They may allege that I am a kidnapper. Please, can you escort me to the nearest police station? Dele, ever the opportunist, saw a chance to solve both their problems. Sani, you be mumu. You have an opportunity to be rich, and you just want to let it fizzle off your palm. Now, I have a suggestion. Since this woman doesn't know you, why don't we sell this baby? Dele suggested. With the money, you can take care of your family and live comfortably. Do you know how much this baby will give us? Please use your brain. Sani hesitated, the weight of Dele's suggestion heavy on his conscience. But the thought of financial relief and avoiding any legal trouble made the idea seem appealing. So how do we go about this? He inquired. I have a contact, Dele said with a bright smile. My contact, Mr. Ola, can help us find a buyer. You know Lagos is full of people who would pay top naira for a child. That night, under the cover of darkness, Sani and Dele made their way to Mr. Ola's house. Mr. Ola's home was in a secluded area, surrounded by tall walls and a heavily guarded gate. Inside, Mr. Ola was a man of impressive stature and wealth. He owns an unlicensed orphanage home where his shady dealings take place. The negotiation was swift and confidential. Mr. Ola, always looking for profitable ventures, agreed to buy the baby. Emma, now sold and renamed Mma, was taken to the luxurious residence of the Amobi family. They had been childless for 7 years and were overjoyed to welcome a baby into their home. Mma was showered with love and care, growing up surrounded by luxury and affection. The Amobis made sure she wanted nothing and raised her with the utmost care as if she was their biological daughter. Back at Amara's end, the panic was still in full swing. She had called her husband Chidi in a state of utter despair. When they returned home, Chidi's anger was palpable. "How could you be so careless, Amara? You have lost our child," he roared. "Chidi, I am sorry. I didn't know how this happened. Before I close my eyes and open them again, make sure you are nowhere near this house. Go and find my child, and don't return to this house without my child," Chidi continued to roar. Crushed by his harsh words, Amara packed a few belongings and left Chidi's house, fleeing from the scene of her greatest failure. She found herself on the streets of Lagos, grappling with her grief and the guilt of her negligence. It's been 2 years, and Kaima was still yet to be found. Amara had thrown herself into her work as a teacher at Future Star Academy, hoping the daily routine would provide some sense of normalcy. But every day was a painful reminder of her lost child. Meanwhile, Mma grew up in the lap of luxury. The Amobi family enrolled her in Future Star Academy, a prestigious school known for grooming future leaders. The irony of fate was that Amara, having rebuilt her life as a teacher, was now one of Mma's educators at the very school her adopted daughter attended. Amara, now a more composed and focused individual, had dedicated herself to her work and had no idea that her new pupil was the very child she had lost. Every day, Amara watched Mma with a mixture of curiosity and sorrow, sensing a familiar connection, but never suspecting the truth. As Mma flourished in her new life, Amara's past continued to haunt her, with every day bringing a new reminder of her lost daughter and the chaos that had changed her life forever. As weeks turned into months, Amara's search for her baby Kaima continued as a daily ritual. Her heart still heavy with grief, and her desperation grew with each passing moment. The first time Amara held Mma in her arms, she felt a profound connection. The little girl had an innate sweetness, and her bright eyes seemed to reflect a part of Amara's own soul. It was uncanny how Mma would often snuggle close to Amara, seeking comfort in her presence. The bond they shared was something Amara hadn't felt with any other child. One fateful day, as Amara was helping Mma change her wet uniform after she accidentally poured water on herself, as Mma jumped, trying to escape the cold splash, Amara noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. On the lower part of Mma's back, just above her diaper line, was a distinct birthmark, a small star-shaped mark. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She had a similar mark, one she had always considered unique and special. The sight of that mark sent a jolt of recognition through her. Could it be possible? Could this be her Kaima, grown and found again? Amara's hand trembled as she gently examined the mark. Her mind racing, she knew she had to find out more. Her quest began with district inquiries and a bit of detective work. She approached the school's administration, inquiring about Mma's family background. The school record revealed that Mma was adopted by the Amobi family, a wealthy and influential family in Lagos. This discovery only deepened Amara's resolve. She had to find them. After a few weeks of persistent searching, Amara finally traced the Amobi's residence. It was a grand estate located on the outskirts of Lagos, surrounded by lush garden and high walls. The opulence of the place contrasted sharply with the modest home she and Chidi had once shared. Amara's heart pounded as she approached the gate. She took a deep breath and pressed the intercom. Moments later, a well-dressed butler answered, and after a brief explanation, allowed her to meet with the Amobi's family. Inside the mansion, Amara was greeted with warm hospitality, though her nerves were on edge. Mr. and Mrs. Amobi, the adoptive parents of Mma, welcomed her with polite smiles. Amara explained her situation and the reason for her visit, her voice trembling with emotion. The Amobis listened intently, their expression a mix of sympathy and surprise. When Amara mentioned the birthmark, Mrs. Amobi's face grew paler. Her behavior changed. Panic flashed across her face as Amara mentioned the birthmark. "How dare you come into my house to claim my child?" Mrs. Amobi barked, her voice cold and sharp. "If you don't leave here this instant, I will call the police on you." "I must see her back," Amara said softly. "Please let me see it." "Don't touch my child," Mrs. Amobi yelled. Mr. Amobi by the side trying to calm her down. "Madam, you have to leave now. I cannot tolerate this nonsense from you. Leave before I call the police for you." Amara, shaking but resolute, refused to back down. "This is my child," she insisted, tears filling her eyes. "I lost her in the market 2 years ago, and I have proof. I have her birth certificate, and I can tell you where she was born." Mrs. Amobi's face grew paler with each word, but she was unwilling to give up Mma, now deeply attached to the little girl she had grown to love. "I don't care what you say. This child is mine now," she snapped, her voice shaking with both anger and fear. "Leave or I will make sure you never see her again." Undeterred, Amara continued to show up at the gate of the Amobi's mansion, pleading with anyone who would listen. Every day she was turned away, but she refused to give up. Her love for Kaima pushed her beyond any fear or threat. Eventually, Amara went to the police. She presented her evidence, Kaima's birth certificate, medical records, and a picture of her baby girl from the day she was born. The police took her claims seriously and launched an investigation. One afternoon, a police squad accompanied by Amara showed up at Amobi's mansion with a warrant for questioning. Mr. and Mrs. Amobi, shocked and fearful, were brought in for interrogation. Under pressure, Mrs. Amobi's composure crumbled, and she tearfully confessed that she had bought Mma from a man named Mr. Ola, who was in the illegal baby trade. She had no idea Mma had been stolen from her biological mother. The investigation quickly expanded, and Mr. Ola was arrested. When interrogated, Mr. Ola admitted to being part of the baby trafficking ring. He had sold Kaima to the Amobis after Dele, Sani's friend, had advised him to sell the baby to get money and settle his debts. Sani, with Dele's persuasion, had agreed, thinking it would be a way to save himself from the harsh reality of his poverty. Sani and Dele were soon arrested as well. Their involvement in the crime laid bare. Both men confessed under pressure, their guilt and shame too heavy to bear. Back at the police station, Amara presented Kaima's birth certificate and records from the hospital where she had given birth. The truth was undeniable. Kaima was indeed Mma. To confirm further, a DNA test was quickly carried out. The results showed that Mma was truly Kaima. The reunion between mother and daughter was filled with both joy and tears. Amara held Kaima, now Mma, close to her chest, her heart finally at peace. She had found her child, but the journey had taken its toll on her emotionally. Amara, filled with a mix of relief and sadness, went to find Chidi. She knelt before him, her heart heavy with guilt and sorrow. Chidi, I was careless, and I hurt us. But I found Kaima. I have brought our daughter home. Chidi, still wounded from the ordeal, stared at his wife. Slowly, his anger melted away as he saw the sincerity in her eyes. He embraced Amara and Kaima, tears streaming down his face. "We will heal," he whispered, "and I will turn a new leaf. I am sorry for the way I've treated you all these years. Please find a place in your heart to forgive me, Amara." Amara forgave Chidi, and they were happy together again. The culprits, Mr. Ola, Sani, and Dele, were sentenced to long prison terms for their role in the illegal baby trafficking. Their actions had torn families apart, but justice was served and the truth was finally out. Amara and Chidi worked hard to rebuild their lives. Their bond, once frayed by grief and anger, grew stronger as they navigated parenthood together. Kaima, now back with her biological parents, was showered with love, finally safe where she belonged. The story of Amara and Kaima spread throughout the community, a reminder of the importance of family, perseverance, and the power of a mother's love. It served as a warning of the dangers of desperation and a testament to the unbreakable bond between parent and child. Okay guys, I have a question for you, please. Can emotional abuse from a partner affect a mother's ability to care for her children? Or was Amara just careless? Please leave your thoughts on the comment section below. Thank you so much for your time. Please, if you found this video interesting, kindly like and comment. Also subscribe to my channel and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you so much and God bless you. See you on my next video. Bye bye.